Hey everyone, Margarita here. I'm going to film this video today on all of the ongoing problems that I've had with all three of my children separately, because they're all separate individual problems, long term, stemming from, at the very root, it's my mother's ongoing crimes long term, from the time my older two children were very little. And that plays a role in everything very long term, for decades. And at the same time, my oldest son's paternal grandmother has been a long-term problem as well, separately. The two women do not even have contact with each other. They're not on the same team whatsoever. They're two separate problems. And on top of that, I had a catastrophic medical emergency that was left untreated, where I was left to die. That was the intent behind it all. And at the root of that is my mother's ongoing decades of crimes. It just so happened something happened to me, and she saw an opportunity to insert herself and make sure I was not going to live. And if I was not the person I am, and what I had built the 20 years prior, what I'd all been working on in my life's work, no, we wouldn't have survived. My younger son and I would not have survived the injury. So all of this ties together. I might actually have to break this down into two parts of a video. I'm going to see how long it takes me to explain this, because it's a lot. It's a lot for anyone to wrap their head around. So on the third problem is, with my youngest child, I gave birth while suffering from carbon monoxide poisoning. And then that was covered up initially by that hospital system, which is a separate hospital system from the one my mother works at. And matter of fact, I knew she was such a tyrant that I made sure that she had no idea where I was even going to have the baby when that did happen. So this is a completely separate situation that happened with that. Due to their crimes, that ties in with the Detroit hospital human trafficking. And I released those videos as well already, so you can view those and what all went on there, because what happened there was not normal. This was my third child. I've had children before. That's not how things go. But they also saw an opportunity, and I was the perfect target based on how I arrived there, the lack of support system, numerous factors. So you can view all those videos separately. What came out of that? Because we were not treated, we were also suffering from severe carbon monoxide poisoning in an extreme medical emergency upon arrival to have the baby. I had just left the facility that caused the injury about 10-12 hours prior, and then arrived there in an extreme amount of distress, but didn't understand what was wrong and didn't have any knowledge of the carbon monoxide, the building having long-term carbon monoxide issues. Did not know that, because this was not a place I regularly worked at. I was just supposed to work there temporarily about 15 hours a week the last 10 weeks of my pregnancy. And due to the longevity of all my mother's ongoing crimes, that's what eventually led me to even be having this additional child, because I was not planning on having any more children. That's also what led me to work at the place that caused all of this. I had been 100% self-employed for some years. I had no intention of ever working for someone else ever again. And at no time should I have ever been in that building or had been made to feel that I should be working that pregnant. What I should have been doing was just stopping what I was doing at 30 weeks pregnant when I stopped, and then resume my self-employment and going back to the gym daily after having the baby. That's what should have happened. I should have never been made to feel that I needed to work anywhere. The problem was, I was the one building and providing everything, and I had already lost so much. Now, if you watch the video that I released on the 2013 escapade my mother went on, stemming from that, this is the fallout of all of that, ongoing for years. So it eventually led to me being pregnant, led to me having another child, led to me temporarily working at this restaurant that had a long-term ventilation system issue, giving birth while suffering from the carbon monoxide poisoning, and then that hospital system separately having their own agenda. And what had come out of it, because all it took was them giving us oxygen during labor and delivery, even though they didn't know it was carbon monoxide poisoning, because the measures in which it's tested for within the hospital system are not correct. 90% of the time it's not going to show up the way they're taught to check for it. So even if they had just given us the oxygen knowing we had extremely low hemoglobin, it would have made a huge difference. It would have had a completely different outcome. But they had no intention of doing that because I do believe they were trying to take my organs and sell them and take my baby as well. And so you can view all those videos separately. I've already talked about all of that. So the outcome of that was I nearly died. I was on my last breath. I barely made it out of it. I barely got us out of the hospital. They still, even afterwards, still had no intention of treating us or helping us whatsoever. The full intent was to make sure I died and take my baby. So again, you can view all that in the video. But because that all happened, we were permanently injured from that. We both acquired brain injuries during the labor and delivery from the lack of oxygen to the brain, from not having enough hemoglobin. And then long term, it ended up, because it was never treated and it wasn't known what was wrong. And prior to all of this, prior to stepping foot in the building that caused all of this, I had no medical history for 20 years, didn't even have a primary doctor. All I had was a chiropractor since 1999. That's it. So it went unnoticed. I mean, it didn't go unnoticed. Something was terribly wrong. And you can view all the videos of that that I've already released regarding the carbon monoxide poisoning and the giving birth while suffering from it and all that. That's already all been released. But something was seriously wrong. I just didn't know what. I couldn't figure it out. And at the same time, the source that caused all this was removed. So that made it even more confusing because I had not worked at that place ever before. I was never supposed to be there in the first place. So I had no knowledge of anything going on in there. And then the problem just continued on. Once we got home from the hospital, it got worse and worse. And there was a couple times I felt like I was going to die shortly after this. And then I had a cousin who stopped by and to see the baby, and she noticed something wasn't right. There was something wrong. She could visibly see. And she's like a walking pharmacy. So she had given me some things that I'd taken, and it worked. Whatever she gave me, I don't even know what it was. I don't know. I trusted her opinion, and it worked, and I took it. And she gave me a bunch of them, and I took it, and it started to kind of clear the excessive part of the problem. And from there, it was still a problem. It just wasn't where I was feeling like I was about to die, just not knowing what was wrong. Because what it was is my body was holding tons and tons of fluids and not processing any of it because I was so extremely overloaded with carbon monoxide. So all of that came out of my mother's long-term crimes, all of the agencies she's used to harass me and chase me around town for decades. The 2013 escapade then led to this baby being born and these problems then occurring. And you know what, honestly, if I had not gone to work there, everything would have been fine. It's just the mentality behind everything I had already been building for all of these decades and what had already been lost. There was so much loss that I'd already suffered from all of the ongoing crimes and extreme harassment. This harassment is criminal. It's criminal, extreme harassment, stalking, defamation of character, slander. I will get more into that. I'll do that its own video on that. But that is what has been going on for decades. That is what had led to all of this. Or I shouldn't have never been in that restaurant in the first place. But the fact that I felt like I couldn't lose anything further because I had everything already set to be done in 2013 when that escapade began. It took me out for 3.5 years before I then purchased my next home, and it should have been done in 2013 while all that was going on. There was numerous large things I was doing in 2013, and that was a trigger for my mother and her undiagnosed mental and personality disorders. That was a huge trigger because I had done several large things that had triggered her, and it wouldn't fit this false narrative. She had all these people believing for some time. You know, it had been over 10 years at that point. Well, I mean, it had been, because I was almost 30, so it had been like 25 years. But from the time my other two kids were born, so this has been going on for some time, I was just unaware of how extreme the situation really was. But the way I felt, and in the manner in which I knew I just couldn't lose anything further, that's why I went to work there in the first place. Now, because everything got covered up during labor and delivery, I then returned to the source of the poisoning 7 months later. I did go back to being self-employed, except for I was extremely unwell, didn't know what was wrong, couldn't figure out why I wasn't okay. Even if I had gotten a primary doctor immediately, they wouldn't have found the problem. So what happened was, because of the brain injuries during labor and delivery, I was stumbling around and fumbling for some time. I mean, it's still an issue, but I was falling quite a bit because it was pretty significant. And I took a really bad fall, and I fell on my butt really hard and didn't really break it, but the bottom part, the lower part of my back, it went slightly left, and it was so extreme that I could barely walk. I couldn't continue on with my main form of self-employment. I was trying to, and it was just so extreme I could barely move. So shortly after this fall is when I got a primary doctor, because then I needed pain intervention. I couldn't do anything, and the baby was 5 months old when it happened initially. So about 2 months after that, of struggling and suffering, I started thinking I needed Social Security disability. I actually looked into it, and then I looked it all up, and I'm like, that's not going to do me any good. It doesn't provide enough income for what I've been building and what I'm doing. Even if it's only temporary, it's not enough to pay for anything. So I just tried to keep struggling along. And what I did is I eventually returned to the source of the poisoning, the restaurant that caused all of this, when the baby was 7 months old. So all year I've been gone from this place. So I've been gone 7 months. I return, and immediately they still have this ongoing carbon monoxide poisoning issue, or this issue in the building and there was visible effects, and an agency had shut them down right around that time as well for operating with too much carbon monoxide in the building. Although I don't know the name of the agency. It was a customer who told me this. She just didn't say it was carbon monoxide. I don't think she knew which gas it was. And I was only there on the weekends when I did come back. So I went back thinking I was going to try to do both forms of employment like I had done all these other decades, without an issue. I never had an issue. I was always very healthy. And prior to that, for about 8 or 9 years, I'd worked out every day, almost every day, about 5 or 6 days a week. I drove my kids to school every day. I worked out every day. I had a whole system. And then I'd be, running this business over here, hitting this form of employment over here, going here, running in between, pick my kids up from school, and I made it flow, and I worked at a very rapid pace where I never slept. I basically just kept on going, like I subconsciously knew my life was going to be cut short for all of those years prior to this. So going back, I thought that's what I was going to do, even though I didn't feel good. I was only able to do it for a little over a month, and then I completely stopped my self-employment because it was so much more strenuous than working at this restaurant a little bit. And the restaurant was not enough money to provide long term. It was enough to kind of skate by temporarily, but it was not. That was the lowest paying restaurant I'd ever worked at. It wasn't low paying, but lowest paying place I'd ever been at personally in all the years I've worked in that industry. But it wasn't enough to provide long term. So I knew that this could only happen for a short period of time. Then after returning, I slowly went downhill each weekend and lost more functioning very slowly over the course of time until the place operated without their ventilation system working at all about 14 months in. And that's when I woke up completely overloaded with the carbon monoxide past the point of no return. So all of this ties back to my mother's ongoing crimes, the 2013 escapade that she went on, destroying my businesses, trying to kidnap my children, doing all these different things. So now I've already released a lot of these videos so you can understand what I'm talking about now. So it's better to watch them in order, watch them based on date released, or watch the playlists in order, watch the intro first and then the carbon monoxide poisoning, and then you can kind of click about through the different playlists from there. But it makes more sense to watch it in order. So that way that's why I'm releasing it in order in different steps so people can understand what I'm talking about, because it's really hard for anyone to follow along. But that's what had all happened. And by the time this all went down, because I was struggling to get out of there, I made several attempts to get myself out of there and get back to normal, but I was so overloaded with carbon monoxide, it didn't break through my brain. That's what it was, until it was so extreme, and there was an extreme issue. It just wasn't really known what was wrong. So it went on like that for some time. By the time this all happened, I had lost so much money, even more money than I initially lost. I mean, at this point, it's over $1 million for sure. I actually, no, like I'm 100% sure. I've already totaled it up. I had to for the court date. It's over $1 million that I've lost just in lost wages. And that's not including what I've made off my real estate investments and everything else I've been working on. That's just what they were calculating on the paper, which is all wrong anyway. So it's much more than that. Not to mention, I have now lost about 9 years of my life, from the injury alone. And what's come out of that with my youngest child, he was injured with me the entire time, living in extreme physical distress with me for a good solid years where it was very extreme, with me for about 3 years as well. And so you can view the videos on that. I've already released that, and his behavior and how he was like that every day, all day long for those years. So you can see that they're in the short section, I believe, because the videos are fairly short. But those I've already released as well. And at the same time all that was going on, here my brain was swelling, sagging, throbbing. Knots of carbon monoxide were loaded up in there, inches of space between my brain and my skull. Suffering from 50, 60 severe symptoms at once. Can't leave the toilet for 10, 12 hours a day, every day, all day. An extreme state, like I'm just talking like extreme suffocation, brain swelling, lack of oxygen to the brain, plus many other symptoms. And this stuff is flowing up and down all in my entire body, my arms, my hands, my whole body is just flowing with carbon monoxide at a cellular level. It was the most extreme case where the human beings got to live through it and are where we are today. And that's only due to my own merits and my life's work, because we did end up treating at the Oxford Center, at a private center. That's where we got treatment at, and that's the only reason we're still alive today. Had we not done that, and had I not been able to afford to pay that amount of money, we wouldn't have survived either which way you look at it, because in the background, my mother had made sure we did not receive treatment within the traditional medical system. And then going forward, each time we did try to seek treatment, all the people working there would see the false information that was already entered into our system, into their computer system, and they would operate on that false information as if it was real. Even to this day, I've been a patient at the center I was there 6 years until they closed down earlier this year due to the explosion. And I had been brought back to the hospital a couple times during that, and they still refused to contact them, refused to contact my actual doctor, refused to contact, Charmaine is the main mental health professional involved, documenting all the crimes long term. So they did not contact anyone who was actually on my care team at all, each time brought back to the hospital since, including the most recent time 2 years ago. So there's an issue here. All of this ties together. The issues I've had with my youngest son are still ongoing to this day, because usually when you have a baby, you for the first year or so, you get them, to sleep on a certain schedule, you feed them at a certain time, and then your life begins to flow. No, that's never happened with us. He's 9. The effects from that initial labor and delivery, and then the ongoing effects from this going on long-term untreated, and how long it took for us to cross the first threshold, which took almost 2 years of daily treatment. So it was about 3 years in from the extreme part of the injury. For that to even clear, I didn't even know if he was going to be, I knew he wasn't going to be teachable. If we didn't keep treating, and if it didn't get removed to a certain degree, he was approaching kindergarten. And I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to clear enough, because he wasn't in a place where he was teachable. The system was not recognizing or helping anything that was wrong with us. And he wouldn't have been able to go to a physical school due to my injuries and due to his injuries and the condition we live with, and how we can't have, there's a lot of things in the environment that we can't have that other people are ignorant to. So he wouldn't even be able to go to a regular school, including carbon monoxide, little bits of it that are fine for regular people. So there's numerous problems here. And finally, we did cross that first threshold, but the issues with him are ongoing long-term as well. So now that he's 9, there's still a problem. There's no sleep schedule. It went on in extreme physical distress for him and I both for 3 years. It was about 3 solid years almost, where it was extreme physical distress with brain swelling, diarrhea, suffocation. I'm talking, and you're sweating excessively as well, because at the same time, for 2 of those years, we were going through daily treatment while that extreme part was going on. We went through daily treatment for about 2.5 years at the center, and then dropped it down to 2 days a week from there. But as you're treating, it comes out in reverse as well. So not only are you suffering continuous symptoms from the initial injury, the initial overload, but then it's coming out in reverse as well. So this all went on for years. And so you can view the videos on his behavior, because the behavior is from the brain swelling, the suffocation, the lack of oxygen to the brain. I don't know if he had knots of carbon monoxide loaded up in the manner in which I did, because this began at 30 weeks during my pregnancy. And labor and delivery, there's no way to actually be able to tell, because he was so small and the system is not taught properly on how to check for this or how to address it. There's no other human being in our boat regarding that situation. The fallout from all of that is still going on today. My child still is not on a sleep schedule. And because of the brain injury, I don't know if it's ever going to get situated, because you have to do things, because we were so injured for so long. He was almost 5 by the time we were able to kind of have one breath of relief, like, okay, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if it's ever going to be able to get situated due to the injuries, going from extreme distress to finally having one breath of relief. Shortly after that, the 2021 Ford gas leak happened. And then that was more extreme chaotic disaster. Back-to-back catastrophic life events. Back-to-back with no break, really no break in between any of this. We had a few good months, a few times, ever. So it's been going on in an extreme manner for about 9 years. But even prior to that, my mother's crimes were already ongoing. I was just able to accommodate them because I was always in good health. I was in extremely good health, and I worked at a very rapid rate, and so it wasn't fully known. So us being that sick and my injury being that extreme, and me building everything by myself, generating 100% of my own income, and then taking care of my kids and raising them myself, this all, it's too much on somebody's plate. So at any given time, all of this time, I've had 20, 30 balls in the air at once the entire time with no break, no relief. We don't have daily functioning from the initial injury, still to this day. There's numerous issues here. My son is homeschooled due to our condition. I don't think that that's ever going to change, because it's too extreme. All it takes is one idiot to give him one wrong thing to eat or drink, or put him in one wrong vehicle and go for one ride, or go into the wrong building. That's all it's going to take to kill him. Same with me. We're in the same boat. So we're better off, doing things the way I have them and try to maintain going forward. But the extreme distress that we were in for so long, the fallout from that is still ongoing, because this went on for so long in that extreme manner with no help from anybody, no support system. The people in my household were all screaming during all of this. When I was stuck in that state like that, every single person in my household was screaming. My oldest son was screaming because of the delusions his Nana had pumped him up full of. My daughter's in the mix creating problems because of, during this, my dad's coming into my house, and my mother's pumping him up full of delusions, getting him to take my daughter and bring her back to their house, and she's pumping her up full of delusions, and she's coming back creating problems and all these 911 calls and CPS calls in the midst of all this. In the background, my mother has no contact during any of this. She's calling all these agencies, the local police department and everything, and every time they arrive, they believe me to be the problem because of whatever she's told them in the background. Now, these are crimes. This is extreme harassment. I was near death during this for years while this was going on. And at the same time, my ex was living in the house for a couple of years as well before Charmaine removed him. Once she realized he had no clue anything had ever even happened to me, and he has a substance abuse problem, she then removed him from my house and told him just to move out without even talking to me about it first. Didn't even ask if I could afford to pay everything on my own. She saw how injured I was and how sick I was, and was realizing that's part of why I can't recover, and that he was coming in screaming and creating problems and just coming and going as if nothing was ever wrong, or as if I didn't need to be back to business and running things the way I always had, because that's what's providing for everybody and building going forward. And he's clueless to any of this even going on. He's living in a delusionary state where he's thinking that his paycheck pays everything, and that was never the case. And he made that up in his head. So once she realized real fast, because I was just so injured. I didn't even have the capabilities to understand the bigger picture of that at the time. I was focused on keeping us alive, staying alive through each day during all of this, and just trying to stay alive. Because when you're stuck in that extreme state of physical distress that never stops, and the only way out is to go to treatment every day, hyperbaric oxygen treatment to remove the carbon monoxide at a cellular level, and repair the brain tissue. It does repair the brain tissue at the same time. But the carbon monoxide has to be removed at the cellular level long term, because some things, an extreme poisoning like that, to that extreme degree, it's going to take years to remove it of daily treatment. All I could do was try to keep us alive and stay alive through each day. And then on the weekends is when I would generate the most money. Even though at no time should I have been standing, driving, or working, I did, for a couple handfuls of times, manage to get myself, well, I didn't get myself, somebody drove me prior to COVID. So I couldn't even drive because I couldn't even get that far. And it was an illusion because my injury's internal. Nobody knows anything's wrong with me. And the environment that it's in, no one would be suspecting there's anything wrong. And I couldn't string sentences together very well either. So I couldn't even deliver what I was trying to say. So I did manage to get my money on the weekends, very minimally, 4 or 5 hour shifts here and there. But I had to stay focused on it. It has to be done on Friday and Saturday only because that's where the majority of the money is. And I managed to pull that off. And then COVID happened, and that's how I was able to treat every day. And it still, at no time was I resting or recovering during any of this. But COVID was what allowed me to get the full pay and just do nothing but treatment, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to hold on much longer. If something crazy didn't happen where I received some money so I could try to recover and remove myself from working altogether, I knew that I wasn't going to be able to hold on and keep this going very much longer. I wasn't going to live no matter what. I was just struggling at an extreme degree to try to keep it going. Now going forward, I'm self-made, self-built. I generate 100% of my own income. So there was no kind of giving up and letting it all go, because if I had done that, either way we would have died, because the manner in which I've built things and the manner in which things are running going forward, and because my plans are set out 5 or more years in advance, long term, with everything I'm building and doing. So if I had let it all go, we still would have died, because the money still wouldn't have been able to be produced to continue on with the treatment and the bills to be paid. And then we still would have died, because then we would have lost our home and there wouldn't have been an ability to rebuild or pick up the pieces from there. So I was aware of that from day one. From the time I woke up, once my brain broke through on January 23rd, 2018, and it flooded my system, the carbon monoxide flooded my whole system after that, and I was dead in my bed for 4 hours. You can watch a near-death experience video on that. That's number 2 on that list. If I had not done what I did from that point to this point, we would have been dead numerous times over again. So I knew that from that point forward that had to be maintained at the very least, or we still weren't going to live. Now, once we did the daily treatment, crossed the first threshold, and then the Ford gas leak happened in 2021, my mother also inserted herself in that and got somebody to believe that I really have this mental disorder. We were never injured, and people can't comprehend, because we're not at a hospital that someone's really that injured and sick. My home was my safe space for all of those years. That's where we recovered at, and I just stayed homebound. We stayed homebound the entire time until my child was 5 years old. We couldn't go anywhere or do anything, but it was COVID that allowed that to happen. But when she's telling all these people all this stuff, they believe her because they believe somebody that extreme would be at a hospital, but they're not understanding that she's criminally insane, and she was a Beaumont employee, and she prevented our treatment, and we can't get treatment at a hospital. Not only that, but the system is not taught to treat an extreme injury to that degree with carbon monoxide. They don't give anybody that many treatments in any hospital system ever. So I did, I have a lot of knowledge regarding all that. That's going to have to be talked about in different videos, but I do know exactly what I'm talking about, how it all works. I'm the reason we're still alive. So all of these problems I've had along the way, it all ties back to my mother's criminal actions, her ongoing harassment using the large agencies, police officers, different court systems, all different types of people to insert themselves and harass me and make sure we nearly die all these times over again. This was all going on extreme during our injury because she knew we were that injured. That's why she was hoping we weren't going to make it out of it. So she used that to make others create more problems in my life during that time excessively. So I was in extreme physical, mental, and emotional distress trying to stay alive when I couldn't even speak. I couldn't even have the sound of my own voice with the amount of symptoms that I had and how extreme the injury was. The only way out was to treat every day and try to make sure I could get to the money on the weekend And then what I would do is I would fall in and out of consciousness because I didn't have because my brain is so extremely injured. There's so much carbon monoxide loaded up in there mixed with the brain injuries. It's very taxing. And no time should I have ever been driving, but what I did was, or working or standing, nothing. I fell in and out of consciousness on the ride back. I knew I couldn't work more than 4 to 5 hours. And it's not regular work, so this is different than what everybody else in the world deals with. But what I would do is on the ride home, it was 35 minutes to drive there. It was probably a little longer because my brain was so injured, but I would pull over and fall in and out of consciousness. I'd have to sleep for several hours and then finish driving home. And that's what I did all prior to COVID. So after COVID, there was a significant change. That didn't really have to happen in that manner, pretty much going forward. But there was a period of time after the gas leak. Here we are running all over the place, running for our lives, that it was extremely lethal. We nearly died several times during that. And due to those particles, I was in and out of consciousness while trying to travel from point A to point B as well. During that, mixed with the carbon monoxide that's already in my system, my open brain tissue, it's all flowing through, it was loading my entire system. The Ford gas was flowing up and down my system as well. Until I got us out of here in the summer of 2022, I got us out of here, bought my home in Ohio, and got us out of here after our hotel got cut off. So we were living in the home for about 7 months on the floor with our brains bleeding from the Ford gas spill. And at the root of that is my mother and her ongoing crimes and the large agencies and people she used to help her. So it's turned into a giant mess because I should have never been forced from my home in the first place. Ford and the people at the city really believe that I have this mental disorder, that nothing ever happened to me. I am going to expose the entire city as well. I will get there. I'm doing things in a certain order because there's an urgency to certain situations. So I'm going to try to do it in the manner in which it's going to be the easiest to expose the people that need to be exposed first. And then I'll get back to the city of Flat Rock and Ford and their roles and their involvement in all the crimes as well, because there's certain direct individuals involved in that as well. They didn't believe any of this was my reality, and it really was. It had been for some years. And no one wanted to comprehend that because of my mother's ongoing crimes. No one's realizing this is a deranged lunatic making deranged, delusional phone calls in the background to all these agencies and people and convincing them a whole false narrative that isn't real about me. And then she's creating the problems in the background, even though there's no direct contact. She's using those around me because she can't control me and hasn't been able to for some time, that this is what she does. And so this all went on during all of this. And then the fallout of the 2021 gas bill also resulted in the kidnapping of my daughter by my mother and the Brownstown, Michigan Police Department not returning her, believing my mother had always had custody of her. And that created additional problems going forward, which I'm still dealing with the fallout of that today. So the problem is here, because I'm 100% self-made, self-built, self-employed, generate everything myself, have been for some time, way prior to my injury. That's how it has to go going forward. Due to the nature of the injury, I can't rebuild. I can't go back and start over. I'm permanently disabled. I'm permanently injured. I live with continuous symptoms all day, every day, still trying to pick up the pieces of daily life from the initial injury 9 years ago, extreme 7 years ago. But, you know, the issue with that is we don't have time. Our bodies and brains aren't on a time schedule. Time is man-made. It's not even a real thing. And because I'm self-employed and the way I run things, I already kind of recognize that, but I was able to, I used it to control my week before I was ever injured. But time is not real, and our bodies and brains don't have the capability to incorporate time in the rest of how the world operates on a 24-hour day and a 7-day work week, or a 7-day week and a 5-day work week. We don't operate that way. I already wasn't operating that way in the first place, but after the injury, it doesn't matter, because when you're in extreme physical distress, in need of oxygen to the brain, and in need of removing an extreme medical emergency and the overload of gas from your systems, and that's not happening, and it goes on for years on end with no relief, there is no time. Your body isn't on a time schedule. Your brain isn't on a time schedule. Same with my youngest child. There's ongoing issues from all of that. That is still the case. We don't have daily functioning. It's not we get up every day and do this and do that and get ready for the day and go about our day. We don't get to do that. We've never been able to do that. I take things as they come. When I wake up, I have to do certain things where we are today. But it was so extreme for so long, it didn't matter. I was completely homebound, completely laid out for years. just suffering in extreme pain that way, and only doing what I absolutely had to keep our lives running, which was literally lay there and suffer, get the money on the weekend, get to treatment, and then COVID allowed that, because I stayed off work for about 16 months, got to pay for about 18 months. That's what allowed me to rest more and not have to incorporate trying to get the money in there. It flowed more easily at that point. And then coming out of it, we had crossed the first threshold where there was a light at the end of the tunnel. So going back, where I incorporated those couple days of working at night on the weekend, when I began to incorporate that in, it was a little easier to do. But even then, I still had ongoing work going on in my current home. The home was completely remodeled right before the Ford gas spill. It was almost done being remodeled. And then because of that, I was forced away from my home, forced to put tenants in it. And those tenants, for that 1 year, it was literally 12 months, and it was known in advance. They weren't going to be here longer than 24 months. Ended up being 18 months, but it was known in advance they weren't going to be here longer than that. This is my home. This home has plans for the future while I make my next moves. And everything was completely destroyed, because then I had to spend all cash on the home I was forced to purchase in Ohio, or we still weren't going to live either way. Not only that, we were living with extreme brain bleeding, in and out of consciousness. His whole first year of kindergarten, the first 2 months, we were on the run for our lives, and we were in and out of consciousness, living with our brains bleeding on the main floor of the home, because the higher up you go, the particles are higher, so we couldn't even use our bedrooms or the upstairs portion of the home. And not even all the rooms on the main level were clear. We had 2 rooms that were significantly more clear. So that's what we did the whole first year of kindergarten, stayed in and out of consciousness till we got ourselves to safety, got ourselves to the other house. And during that 1 year that we were gone, the lady and her 7 kids did over 100 grand in damage to the home. And you can view all those videos. I've already released those videos. That was done in 12 months flat. And then tried to hide it. So then, because she tried to hide it and it was all water damage, it then created a mold problem. So that is extremely lethal to us, just like all the other particles that are lethal to us. So addressing this was such an extreme issue. I was pretty much forced to retire once I got the home back in my possession. It did take a couple months to get her out. At the same time, my mother was calling the city, calling the police department, getting them to harass me, not take reports on the criminal negligence or the stealing of the insurance checks and throwing them away, and all these problems this girl created. And they're not even trying to help, because they're taking my mother's delusional phone calls in the background as well. Because she really should have been charged for what had happened. On top of the fact that throwing away those insurance checks that were initially sent, even though it wasn't enough to cover everything, I ended up having to hire a public adjuster to get the money down the line. But throwing away those checks caused me to end up filing for Chapter 13 bankruptcy. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was managing, I was barely struggling along, barely keeping us alive all of that time for all of those years. At this point, my son was then, 7 years old at that point? Yeah, so end of 2023, he was 7 or 8? Maybe, no, he was like 7. So, yeah, all that went on in an extreme manner for all that time. Very extreme physical distress, to where there's no daily functioning. You're not getting up, getting dressed for the day, taking a shower, brushing your teeth and your hair, and going about your day. We don't have that. We've never had that. That's been ongoing since his birth 9 years ago. Extreme for the last 7 years since the injury became extreme. It was just an extreme fight to stay alive for those 3 years. And then going forward, we were able to kind of incorporate a little bit of this and that back into our lives. But at the same time, I had to have somebody work for me for a year and a half. And then when I went to Ohio, I had to have my cousin work for me for another year and a half. Otherwise, things weren't going to be able to run at all. So I did manage. I barely skated by. I barely kept us alive. There isn't another human being in the boat that we're in who have ever experienced what we're experiencing, on top of the extreme criminal harassment of a deranged lunatic in the background, making sure she inserts herself in every situation that goes on, and then creates the situations as well. And these people are all involved in the crimes. I guarantee you they're all trying to hide and act like they're not involved in it, and that's why there's no arrest been made. But hey, I'm gonna keep talking, I'm gonna keep exposing until every single person involved is exposed, because I gotta do it in a certain order or no one's gonna understand it. But I will be exposing all of those people as well. So there's numerous crimes going on. This is all still going on today. I did manage to get the mold under control within a couple months of having the home back in my possession. It has been, I believe, 20 months since the incident occurred in the home. I am now finally starting to do the finishing touches, and the insurance finally working with me on the last portion of the money that's owed. Because they were trying to go against me and not pay me rightfully for what was owed as well, numerous times. But then once I stated, you're now participating in the RICO crimes, and I'm not able to pick up the pieces of my life from these already ongoing RICO crimes, you're now participating. And once I stated that to them, they worked with me immediately, wired me $1,000, wired it to me within 24 hours overnight, and then had the next check in the mail like 2 business days, not even 2 business days later. And then the ball's in my court right now. I am working on getting them the next email with what they need to move forward with that next check. And then I believe there'll be 1 to 2 more checks after that. And then it's done. So that money is starting to flow. A large agency like that, a company like that, who's not involved in any of the bullshit long term or knows anything about any of that, they just have their own agenda of how insurance companies operate, didn't want to pay it. But once I stated what was already going on, and that's actually the reason for the damage to the home that should have never occurred, because I should have never been forced away in the first place, they didn't want to be involved in it once I explained what was actually going on. And they immediately decided, no, it's in our best interest, we're going to work with her because she's about to take people down. So they are working with me. There is no further problem with my homeowner's insurance as there was in the past, because there was a significant problem there going on for a minute. But all of this has led to where we are today. There was a solid year and a half where I was running around all over trying to take care of my dad once he was injured as well, until I was banned about a year ago from the facility, all on delusions and crimes. Those are still ongoing crimes as well today. I am getting there. I'm going to finish exposing more of that as well. So during this, there's been several other spills, several other periods where we've had to shelter in place due to other environmental spills and explosions. Those are always going to be a problem for us. We can't always travel out and about out of our home and go places due to our injuries and the condition of our system. Our systems are fragile. Every cell is fragile. We live that way. Other people are judging us on what I look like or what they've been told about me, and that stuff isn't real. So it's created more problems. Further crimes have gone on due to all of that. Here I am just trying to pick up the pieces all of this time later. And, I just try to get through each day with the most urgent situation that has to be addressed each day, because I have so many balls in the air that I can't, it's not even feasible it's not logical. I'm one single person who's extremely injured and sick. So it's not even logical to figure out how somebody's going to take care of all these matters when it's not possible. But I did run off for that, it was about 15 months where I did provide a lot of care for my dad. I was able to get to him all of that time. Technically, if everybody had taken my report seriously initially from the day one of his injury, he wouldn't have had the additional injuries and where he is today. He would have been home a long time ago, and he really should have been moved home to my home, because my home is safe and it was already set up for somebody in a wheelchair. And he had already built the additional bedroom. He could have had his own bedroom and living room. It could have all been set up for him, and we would have all just been here together. But due to the ongoing crimes of my mother and nobody taking my report seriously that I made in advance, all of those things did happen. So it's all played out. The proof is all there. I already made the reports in advance of what she was going to do, and then she did those things, and now he's more injured. So he should have been moved home with me initially. The girl should have been removed from my home 12 months after she had moved in. And about 2 months later is when, from that 12-month period, is when she created all the damage. The home was already remodeled. It was already set. It already had plans. There was already plans for me to make my next moves going forward. I thought I was going to come back, paint a couple walls, and then make my next moves. But because of everybody's crimes, separately and together, it's created an extreme, catastrophic situation that I'm still trying to dig my way out of. Now, because my mother has painted this delusional picture of me to all these people about who I am as a person or what's going on in my life, she couldn't let anybody know the home I own, the size of it, the fact that it's already set up for somebody in a wheelchair. There was no reason for the workers' comp to pay $120,000 to remodel their home to get him home, and he's still not allowed to come home anytime soon. There was no need for that because my home was already set up for that. It would have took minimal modifications to get him home to my home where he's safe, because I don't poison food. So we could have all been homebound and injured together. We've been homebound. My youngest son and I, we've been homebound. We mostly stay homebound, and then we operate out of our home and go where we have to. If there's spills and stuff going on that limit us, then we stay homebound. On top of the brain injuries, we don't have full capacity. We just do what we can. We do what we have to, when we need to. And then there's times it is all clear where we can kind of like go places now, but we could not do that the first 5 years of his life. But we can do that now from time to time. So, we're used to living that way. My son doesn't even realize he lives a modified life. And my dad could have been here with us a long time ago in safety, not around my mother, and the workers' comp would have paid his own care team. So that would not have been on me. All I had to do was manage the care team and keep everything running in the manner in which I was building things and continue to produce the income in which I had already had set in advance. Everything is set 5 years in advance. So there was about a good 15 months of disruptions due to my dad's injury, which is also tied into my mother's ongoing crimes, because she had actually left him a batch of poison treats to eat while she was in California. She had left a week prior, and he was eating one per day. I have a picture of it. I took a picture of it all. I know how many were in the pan. I know what pan she used. I have a sample of the treats. He had eaten one per day, it looked like, from the time she had left, from the time that his injury, the time that his injury occurred. I do believe that played a role in him walking off the scissor lift 15 feet in the air that caused his injury. And I made all these reports in advance, and no one took me seriously. And then my mother did get away with poisoning my dad's food quite frequently there those first 15 months until I nearly got her caught. And it had caused several near-death experiences, which is why he's so injured and in the position he's in today. So all of that did get added to my plate once I had left and moved down to Ohio and got us to safety. Several months after that, it was about 6 months after I'd purchased, 7 months after I'd purchased the home, that had happened. So for a time, I was running all over the place, but that was the first time since my youngest son was born that I was actually running around like that. Because it was not possible for me to do all prior. So I was able to incorporate that in, and then at the same time I had to sleep on my friend's couch because I couldn't get back to my home and get to my dad every night for dinner to make sure he had clean food for dinner. That was what I was trying to focus on, because I knew what she was doing and I knew she was poisoning his food. And it's all there. If you read all my reports that I made and you watch the patterns of his hospital visits and his notes and what had all happened, it's all there. The proof is all there. It's in the pudding. Nobody's listening to me. So it's all there, and I was able to get that done for that period of time. However, by the time she had gotten me banned, I was so completely wiped out that I was just laid out here for a couple months while I was waiting on my homeowner's checks, my next one, so I could make things flow and get the work going on this home. The home should have never been damaged. No tenant should have ever been put in it. My plans and how I build should have been able to continue. After everything I had already been through, those should have been allowed to continue in the manner in which I was building things. So due to all that, I was kind of laid out for a little while. I had just been in such extreme chaos and running all over. During that time, I did have to pull over and fall in and out of consciousness and sleep in my car, like wherever I was going, numerous times during all that, because my brain doesn't have the capacity. I don't have the daily functioning. I don't get to just get up every day and do what other people do. The whole time, since we've been injured, since my son was born, we're homebound. We get up every day in our home. We do what we need to out of our home, and I make the money that I need to minimally. I don't spend large amounts of time at work, a 40-hour work week like regular people. Work smart, not hard. I don't do that. I don't play that game. I never did prior to the injury. I learned this a long time ago. So what I did was I built at a very rapid rate, working smart prior to the injury for all those years, for about 2 decades. So that's what enabled us to pay for the treatment and stay alive, because I make large sums of money in small amounts of time. It's just there's so many crimes that are ongoing during all this and still going on today, and all these people participating in all of this. I'm one small person who's injured, and they've all their actions have taken me out. And has now played a role in our treatment stopping. Prior to the Oxford Center explosion, our treatment stopped a little over a year prior to that regular treatments, because It's required that we maintain treatment to maintain what functionality we did finally get ourselves to. It took all those years to get to. We still had to maintain treatment every week no matter what. And that was minimal. We still needed daily treatment for a year or two going forward from that point forward. And now we're so far backwards from going without the maintenance treatments, going without treatment at all since the explosion, till I got my chamber up and running about a month ago. Because I have my own home chamber. It was just my concentrator was broken. So now we have a rented one temporarily while I figure out what I'm going to do next. So we are treating. It's just the pressure isn't as great. So it takes some time to kind of jumpstart our systems to get moving. We've been working with that for about a month. And treatment couldn't be disrupted. The entire time we had to maintain treatment. We went to in the extreme medical emergency, went 14 months where it was very extreme, where it was needed daily until we got ourselves to a certain degree, but it wasn't given to us. And I had to find the private center in order to treat us. And then it took 2.5 years of everyday treatment. It took a little over a year. I think it was about a year, a little over a year of 2 days a week treatment. Maybe it was about 14, 15 months. We did 2 days. I did 2 days a week. He did one. And then from there, I did 1 day a week, all the way until so many crimes had occurred and so many people had participated in these crimes and played a role that it eventually made it so I couldn't get the money that I needed to maintain the treatments, because it's costly. It's $200 a treatment per person. That was $600 a week for us, $400 a week to do, each of us doing one a week was $400 a week. So once all of that reached a certain point and all the crimes reached that point with all those people involved, that was the fallout of all that. And then I had two additional brain injuries during that time as well. I was dead on the floor at Walmart for 15 minutes, completely unresponsive. So you can view that video. That's the third near-death experience video as well. And then from that point forward, I really wasn't able to. I was struggling to barely maintain how I make my money on the weekend at least keep that running, because that's the glue holding everything together. Once that's gone, it's over. We're not going to live long term. We're slowly going to slip away, and we're just not going to be here anymore. That's going to be the end result. Treatment is required to keep us alive. And all these idiots involved seem to think it's a joke. It's not a joke. This is the story of my life. We had been in that boat for many years prior. I make this clear to everybody, and everybody still continues to participate in the crimes and operate against me and create further problems. So we are now treating with the soft chamber that I do have. It's just not as strong of a pressure. We are going to have to eventually upgrade our system. That's why I created the GoFundMe initially to treat at the center, but now they're permanently closed. So now we just need to upgrade our system is what's going to have to happen. But because I don't release enough videos, the consistency isn't like there because I only have so much functioning. I'm not allowed to put the GoFundMe link in every video description. So what I did was I put my Cash App and my Venmo link because I didn't know what else to do. But that's kind of the basis of everything that's been going on and why our lives are so different. There isn't other people out here dealing with a deranged lunatic who's destroying their life in the background using large agencies and people to help her long term for decades, and then living in an extreme medical emergency without a proper support system or proper help from anybody, while everybody around them is being manipulated and making the problem worse and creating problems at the same time, screaming delusions, screaming in my house when I can't have sound, forcing me to scream back, which is making it worse and re-injuring my brain as well. Like, it was making it so I was barely recovering. But once the chaos stopped, once my ex was removed from the home and there was a lot less screaming, and at the same time my son he got manipulated by his paternal grandmother and went to go stay over there. So there's been some ongoing issues with that as well. At that moment, I had no fight left. I did attempt to get a partial guardianship at that time. But because what I said was going to happen hadn't happened yet, they didn't believe me. And because I didn't have his medical documents, because I was in an extreme plight for my life, I wouldn't be hunting down his medical documents from a few years prior in the state that I was in and what I was already dealing with. I couldn't produce those documents. It created further issues. Those issues are still going on today. So I'm going to break this down into 2 videos. I knew I was going to have to make people understand. But that's an issue. And those 2 were removed right around in the same week. They both left my home in the same week, to where half the people that were creating some of the issues, but it was due to other people manipulating, that's what allowed me to kind of start to be able to rest a little more and not be in such extreme distress. Because at that same time, right after that, we'd crossed that first threshold where my brain stopped sagging, the inches of space were no longer there, the knots of carbon monoxide all cleared, literally all in that 1 week. But it took 2 years of daily treatment to get to that point. It wasn't just it happened that week. It took daily treatment for all that time for that to even happen. So in that moment, I didn't have any fight left in me. I was fighting to barely stay alive and get through each day for so long. I actually told God I want out of the mission. I don't want to be here anymore. Take me out. I'm done. I'm out of here. Make it or break it, because I'm done. I can't keep living like this. It's not tolerable to wake up every day with your brain swelling and sagging and there's no relief and you're in extreme pain. And here you are trying to do what reverses all of it every day for all that time. And then it's not really, I'm not crossing the threshold to where there's enough relief for long periods. It was like almost 2 years. And that was what I started thinking, because I said, I just can't do it anymore. I literally had no fight left. I knew if we didn't cross the threshold, I still wasn't going to be able to hold on either. And literally at the end of that week, everything changed. I had to let my son get manipulated and continue to get manipulated, because I had to, because technically he was an adult, even though he has high functioning autism, there's still issues. So I'll talk about that in part 2. But I didn't have an ounce of fight left to continue to fight against all these systems and agencies and people who are creating the problems. I had to address still the most urgent, which was my 2 minor children, the injury that I'm still dealing with, how I'm going to pick up the pieces financially, how I'm going to continue to build financially, because I provide everything myself and build everything myself, generate my own income. There's other issues here. It's a lot harder to do that, maintain all of that. But I had built my life to a certain degree all those years prior to get to that point. It's just I don't have a proper support system, and at the same time, those around me are being manipulated. So I did have to let him continue to be manipulated and let her manipulate him and let it go on for some time. And now 4 years have gone by, a little over 4 years have gone by, and now I have to readdress the situation in the current, now that I am where I am today, and I've crossed several thresholds, and now 2 of my kids are adults technically. I am going to have to address that, because there's a further issue. It doesn't matter if I don't address it now. The problem is still going to fall back on my lap down the line, and the problem's going to become worse later down the line. So it does have to be addressed. I will get to that in part 2. I knew it was going to be 2 parts. It's so much to get anybody to understand what I've been through. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to give the basis of what's all going on and why each of my children individually have a different problem. And those around me and the ongoing crimes, it's all tied together. It's due to the ongoing crimes and harassment that are all criminal harassment, criminal stalking, criminal defamation of character, criminal gossip, criminal slander. It's all criminal, because now you've got so many people and agencies involved that this is the fallout of all of this still going on today. And here we are without the ability, like we don't have daily functioning. So here we are just still struggling through each day. I try to just take the ball that's going to fall to the ground the quickest. And it's been going on that way since the day of my injury. So all of these matters do have to be addressed. I am slowly getting them all in line. And I can't make the homeowners checks move any faster. Although I am addressing some of that work currently. It's just, I also have paperwork. I always have a lot of ongoing paperwork. That is all being addressed. But there isn't other people in my boat. I don't believe there's another human being in my boat. And then to have no proper support system, I don't believe there's another human being in my boat. And then had made it to the level that I'm on in life and then make it to where I am today. I don't think there's another person out there like that. So yeah, I'll get back with more of this in part 2 and go further into the depth of the manipulation of my children and what's all gone on due to the fallout of all of this. So I'll be back with more. Thanks. Bye.